I'm Simone Ferrero. I'm working as an hematologist in the University Hospital of Torino, that is in northern Italy, as you can see. I mainly work with lymphoma patients, and I have a particular interest in Waldenstrom disease and also in translational disease. So I will talk about what's new in Waldenstrom. That is a very wide argument. So this is the overview of my talk today. I will describe some new drugs that are under development and testing in Waldenstrom. I will describe some clinical trials that are currently active in Europe for Waldenstrom patients. I will introduce some concepts of immunotherapy that are really a new frontier of drug and therapy development in lymphoma and also, I hope, in the next future also in Waldenstrom. And finally, I will give you some examples of translational research studies or biological studies that are currently ongoing in Europe. So you probably don't know, but there are many drugs that are being developed in Waldenstrom. Some of these you already know. There are covalent BTK inhibitors, non-covalent BTK inhibitors. There are BTK degraders that are something different from BTK inhibitors. There are BCL2 inhibitors, we already talked about it. Proteasome inhibitors, immunomodulatory drugs such as lenalidomide or similars, radioimmunotherapy, that is combination of immunotherapy with radiation. And then there is a list of famous or not famous monoclonal antibodies, anti-CD20 like rituximab, anti-CD19, CD38, anti-CXCR4, so a lot of. And finally, there is the new frontier of immunotherapy. I will talk later a bit about bispecific antibodies and about CAR T-cell immunotherapy. So as you can see, there are really many drugs. Let's start from some examples and some clinical trials that are currently active in Europe and in which patients can be enrolled. I will present two trials of the European Consortium of Waldenstrom macroglobulinemia. It is a scientific consortium that is running clinical trials in Europe for Waldenstrom patients. This is the XAR study, XAR1. It is currently ongoing in this country, Germany, Czech Republic, Austria, and Greece. And it tests the efficacy of a covalent BTK inhibitor, that is ibrutinib, with the addition of a proteasome inhibitor, that is a carfilzomib. This trial is going to enroll 99 patients. It's for patients with primary Waldenstrom, so first-line treatment, and also relapse treatment. The enrollment is ongoing, so there is also some space to enroll more patients. And the idea is a randomization one-to-one from the treatment with ibrutinib alone and a treatment combining ibrutinib and carfilzomib, so the covalent BTK inhibitor and the proteasome inhibitor. This is another trial that is ready to start in Europe, again from the European Consortium of Waldenstrom, that is the Vivaone. It investigates the combination of BCL2 inhibitor, that is venetoclax, and anti-CD20 monoclonal antibody, that is rituximab, versus a standard chemoimmunotherapy. This trial will enroll 80 patients in Germany, France, and Greece. And again, there will be a randomization one-to-one between the classical chemoimmunotherapeutic schedule, that is DRC, we talked before, you probably know, dexamethasone, rituximab, and cyclophosphamide, versus the investigational treatment that is made by a combination of venetoclax, BCL2 inhibitor, plus rituximab. Then there is another interesting trial conducted by only UK, that is the Rainbow, a very nice name. And again, it's a randomized study investigating classical chemoimmunotherapy versus investigational treatment composed by the covalent BTK inhibitor ibrutinib, again, plus anti-CD20 rituximab. This is an ongoing trial. 148 patients will be enrolled. There is still space to enroll patients within February next year. And patients will be randomized one-to-one, again, to receive either conventional DRC versus the experimental therapy that is made, again, by ibrutinib and rituximab. Then there are a lot of, or some, new academic trials that are in activation. What does it mean, academic? Academic means that these trials have been designed, studied, and conducted by universities, and not directly from pharmaceutical companies. There are two similar trials that probably will start next year, or in the next months, or in the beginning of the next years, that are dedicated to a specific condition that is a complication of Waldenstrom, and it is the polyneuropathy, the anti-myelin-associated polyneuropathy. The MAGNAS trial will start here in Netherlands, in Utrecht and Amsterdam. It investigates the combination of a covalent BTK inhibitor, that is zanubrutinib, plus the classical rituximab. In Italy, we'll open, I hope in the next months of the next year, the MAZINGA trial that is similar but uses only the covalent BTK inhibitor as monotherapy without rituximab. So also results will be interesting to compare the results of the two different trials. Then another specific trials that is going to start here in Netherlands by the Ovon group, Netherlands, Belgium, Norway, and Denmark, will investigate the use of zanubrutinib, again, in a particular condition that Josephine described before, that is a cold agglutinin disease, a complication of some types of or subtypes of IgM condition and also Waldenstrom. And finally, another trial is going to start, coordinated by the Ovon group in Netherlands, Belgium, and probably Greece and Denmark, investigating this new type of therapy that is bispecific antibody monotherapy in relapsed refractory Waldenstrom. Moreover, there are ongoing sponsored trials that are sponsored by pharmaceutical company. I cannot make advertisement of these trials, but I think it's important that you know that there are several trials using new drugs, for example, BCL2 inhibitor monotherapy, radioimmunotherapy, non-covalent BTK inhibitors, or bispecific antibodies that are currently running in many countries in Europe, and you should ask your physician if these are the trials for you, and if they are, whether they are active in their centers or in surrounding centers. But there are some new frontiers in lymphoma in general, and probably in Waldenstrom also in next future. These are the immunotherapy, CAR-T and bispecific antibodies. What does it mean? So the concept is that we are going to exploit the function of our immune systems, so our good blood cells, mainly lymphocytes, and mainly T lymphocytes, against the tumor, against the lymphoma or the Waldenstrom in this condition. What is CAR-T? CAR-T are healthy blood cells, mainly T lymphocytes that we all have, that are genetically modified in laboratory, to make them very active against tumoral cells and to kill tumoral cells, to be very bad against tumoral cells. And as you know, probably when there is a battle, there is also a struggle, and it can be that also some side effects can happen. And these are specific from CAR-T. They are different from all the other side effects that you probably know or have been experienced in your daily life, in your Waldenstrom life. I will describe very briefly how these CAR-T cells are produced in lab. So normal and healthy T cells are withdrawn from the patients. They are cultivated and manipulated in lab by the infection by a retroviral vector, transforming these cells and making them very aggressive against the tumor. So first of all, this is a treatment made at least in 3 phases. First of all, we should harvest the cells from patients. Then these cells, lymphocytes, are manipulated in lab. And this process may take a while, so 30 or 40 days, up up to 30 or 40 days, in which the patients are in an outpatient condition. Then they are hospitalized for a lymphodepletive chemotherapy, so a low-dose chemotherapy that prepares patients to receive the manipulated cells. And then patients receive the CAR-T reinfusion in hospital. And then this is different from country to countries. They are discharged to outpatients, while these new cells are acting in the patient. Another type of immunotherapy that is very interesting and under development and in clinical use in other types of lymphomas are bispecific antibodies. They act somewhat in a similar way to CAR-T because they are specific both for the tumoral cells from some antigen on the tumoral cell and specific with some antigens on T lymphocytes. So their role is to connect T lymphocytes, so our immune system, to tumoral cells and making our T lymphocytes more aggressive against tumoral cells. The advantage of bispecific antibodies versus CAR-T is that they are available in hospital. They are in the pharmacy of the hospital. So you can receive lymphoma patients, till now not Waldenstrom, but probably yes in the future, but lymphoma patients are able to receive bispecific antibodies in 3, 4, 5 days and not 30 or 40 days like CAR-T. The administration is usually an outpatient administration, but it can last every 3 weeks for about a year. And another very important issue is that the adverse events of bispecific antibodies are lower, generally lower than CAR-T. So probably CAR-T and bispecific antibody will gain a lot of space in the treatment of lymphoma and also of Waldenstrom in the next future. But you probably know better than me that sometimes the journey of Waldenstrom patient looks like a winding road. Sometimes we cannot understand why some patients are doing so well and why some patients are doing really so bad. And to better understand this, I think we should go to the top. We should better understand the biology of the disease to pursue a personalized treatment for every patient. And this is just an example of some translational studies that are biological studies that are being conducted in Europe. This the BioWM trial is an observational trial conducted thanks to the funding of International Waldenstrom Foundation and the Italian Lymphoma Foundation. It has enrolled 300 patients in Italy and in Spain with the primary aim of collecting tumoral samples from blood, from bone marrow, and from urine with many objectives. One of these is to investigate the classical mutations, MYD88, 6CR4, and other mutations in both tissues. One idea is that to understand whether we can skip the bone marrow aspiration and we can obtain all the important information about your disease by using peripheral blood. That would be really nice. And finally, another very important question that we have is why does IgM gas and premalignant conditions can evolve to Waldenstrom? It is still unclear. We know that in healthy individuals that have no symptoms, might be a genetic predisposition to develop a blood disorders. Probably one genetic hit that we are not aware of it. Probably it happens on the B cell that make healthy B cells to be a precursor cell. In this phase, patients has no symptoms and probably is not aware of the disease. And then there is probably another genetic hit that transform the precursor cell in a pre-malignant condition. And sometimes we can identify this pre-malignant condition and we call it IgM gas. But still, IgM gas, as said before, has no symptoms. And finally, multiple genetic hits, it's probably transform the pre-malignant condition in a malignant open disease. It is Waldenstrom symptomatic disease, and that needs treatment. But all this way is really less understood. And so we are conducting, again, thanks to the fundings of the support of International Waldenstrom Foundation, both in Italy and in collaboration also with the Belgium University of Ghent, translational studies on the basis of these 300 patient samples to understand, with many complex biological analysis, to better understand these, the patients or the disease journey. So, these are the conclusion of my talk. We have described several new drugs that are currently under development in Waldenstrom. But nevertheless, only few clinical trials are currently active in Europe, and they are mainly concentrated in some referral center in each country. So you have to ask your physician whether a clinical trial is active in your country or in your city or in your country. Then I've introduced the concept of new immunotherapies that are highly active, already available for some types of lymphoma, not yet for Waldenstrom, but I hope and I think that they will be active, they will be available in the next future. And finally, that if we want to pursue a personalized treatment for every patient, we should better understand the biology of the disease. And so dedicated translational studies are eagerly awaited. And for these studies, actually the researchers need patient samples, patient blood. These are the acknowledgements to the Italian Lymphoma Foundation, to the IWMF, and the team in Torino, both clinical and lab team that is supporting me. It is working every day, not today, that is Saturday, but every day. And they made me possible to come here and to the other congresses. Thank you. And the session is open for questions, I think.
Thank you. You mentioned venetoclax earlier in your speech, in your talk. Can you tell more about it? I have one, my group members in Finland who asked me to bring up this question.
Yeah, venetoclax is a BCL2 inhibitor. It's highly active in chronic lymphocytic leukemia and is currently used in chronic lymphocytic leukemia and also in other types of acute leukemias, for example. And it has some activities also in some lymphoma, like mantle cell lymphoma and Waldenstrom. Currently, at least in Italy, venetoclax has no indication for Waldenstrom, probably because for regulatory reason, the ratio between benefit and costs or a side effect has not passed these regulatory steps. Anyway, we are using venetoclax. We are asking for named patient program. So we are asking directly to the company for some cases because it can be effective after the failure of BTK inhibitors. One of the problems is that the responses cannot last long. So maybe 6 months, 12 months. So it could be a drug, a bridging drug towards new therapies or a clinical trial. I currently at least 2 patients who are taking venetoclax, and it's fine.
Thank you, Dr. Ferrero. Are you aware, are there any European patients on that Clover trial? That was something that Harriet mentioned in the UK. That's the one with the radio immunotherapy?
No, I'm not aware. If some other colleagues of mine is aware, it's not open in my center, not at all. I think it's open in Spain.
So just so that everyone can hear that, so we think the Clover trial has started in the UK and it's also available in Spain, but not in some of the other countries at the moment.